When we reached the manor, Father ordered me to change into something clean and hurry down to greet the guests who were arriving to pay their respects. My room was peaceful. Everything was just as it had been before Mother died. The birds embroidered into the coverlet on my bed were safe in their world of cross-stitched leaves. My diary was on the dresser. The friends of my childhood, Flora, the rag doll, and Rosamond, the wooden doll in the gown with 7 flounces, nestled in their basket. I sat on the bed, fighting my need to obey Father's order to change and go back downstairs. Although I wanted to draw comfort from my room, from my bed, from the light breeze coming through my window, I kept thinking instead of Father and getting dressed. Once I'd overheard Bertha tell Mandy he was only a person on the outside and that his insides were ashes mixed with coins and a brain. But Mandy had disagreed. He's human through and through. No other creature would be as selfish as he is. Not fairies or gnomes or elves or giants. For a full 3 minutes, I delayed getting dressed. It was a terrible game I played, trying to break my curse, seeing how long I could last against the need to do what I had been told. There was a buzzing in my ears, and the floor seemed to tilt so far that I feared I would slide off the bed. I hugged my pillow until my arms hurt, as if the pillow were an anchor against following orders. In a second, I was going to fly apart into 1,000 pieces. I stood and walked to my wardrobe. Immediately, I felt perfectly fine. Although I suspected Father wanted me to wear another morning gown, I put on the frock Mother liked best. She said the spicy green brought out my eyes. I thought I looked like a grasshopper in it, a skinny, spiky grasshopper with a human head and straight hair. But at least the gown wasn't black. She hated black clothing. The great hall was full of people in black. Father came to me instantly. "Here's my lass, young Eleanor," he said loudly. He led me in, whispering, "You look like a weed in that gown. You're supposed to be in mourning. They'll think you have no respect for your—" I was engulfed from behind by 2 chubby arms encased in rustling black satin. "My poor child, we feel for you." The voice was syrupy. "And Sir Peter, it's dreadful to see you on such a tragic occasion." An extra tight squeeze, and I was released. The speaker was a tall, plump lady with long and wavy, honey-colored tresses. Her face was a pasty white with twin spots of rouge on the cheeks. With her were 2 smaller versions of herself, but without the rouge. The younger one also lacked her mother's abundant hair. Instead, she had thin curls stuck tight to her scalp, as though glued there. "This is Dame Olga," Father said, touching the tall lady's arm. I curtsied and knocked into the younger girl. "Beg pardon," I said. She didn't answer, didn't move, only watched me. Father continued. "Are these your lovely daughters?" "They are my treasures. This is Hattie, and this is Olive. They are off at finishing school in a few days." Hattie was older than I, by about 2 years. "Delighted to make your acquaintance," she said, smiling and showing large front teeth. She held her hand out to me as though she expected me to kiss it or bow over it. I stared, uncertain what to do. She lowered her arm, but continued to smile. Olive was the one I'd bumped. "I'm glad to meet you," she said, her voice too loud. She was about my age. The furrows of a frown were permanently etched between her eyes. "Comfort Eleanor in her grief," Dame Olga told her daughters. "I want to talk with Sir Peter." She took Father's arm, and they left us. "Our hearts weep for you," Hattie began. "When you bellowed at the funeral, I thought, what a poor thing you are." "Green isn't a mourning color," Olive said. Hattie surveyed the room. "This is a fine hall, almost as fine as the palace, where I'm going to live someday. Our mother, Dame Olga, says your father is very rich. She says he can make money out of anything. Out of a toenail, Olive suggested. Our mother, Dame Olga, says your father was poor when he married your mother. Our mother says Lady Eleanor was rich when they got married, but your father made her richer. We're rich too, Olive said. We're lucky to be rich. Would you show us the rest of the manor? Hattie asked. We went upstairs, and Hattie had to look everywhere. She opened the wardrobe in Mother's room and, before I could stop her, ran her hands over Mother's gowns. When we got back to the hall, she announced, 42 windows and a fireplace in every room. The windows must have cost a trunk full of old KJs. Do you want to know about our manor? Olive asked. I didn't care if they lived in a hollow log. You'll have to visit us and see for yourself, Hattie said in response to my silence. We stood near the side table, which was loaded with mountains of food, from a whole roast heart with ivy threaded through its antlers, to butter cookies as small and lacy as snowflakes. I wondered how Mandy had the time to cook it all. Would you like something to eat? Yeah, Olive began, but her sister interrupted firmly. Oh no, thank you. We never eat at parties. The excitement quite takes away our appetites. My appetite, Olive tried again. Our appetites are small, Mother worries, but it looks delicious. Hattie edged toward the food. Quail eggs are such a delicacy. 10 brass KJs apiece. Olive, there are 50 at least. More quail eggs than windows. I like gooseberry tarts, Olive said. We mustn't, Hattie said. Well, maybe a little. A giant couldn't eat half a leg of deer plus a huge mound of wild rice and 8 of the 50 quail eggs and go back for dessert. But Hattie could. Olive ate even more. Gooseberry tarts and currant bread and cream trifle and plum pudding and chocolate bonbons and spice cake, all dribbled over with butter rum sauce and apricot sauce and peppermint sauce. They brought their plates close to their faces, their forks at the shortest possible distance to travel. Olive ate steadily, but Hattie put her fork down every so often to pat her mouth daintily with her napkin. Then she'd tuck in again, as avidly as ever. It was disgusting to watch. I looked down at the throw rug that used to lie under Mother's chair. Today it had been moved near the food. I had never concentrated on it before. A hound and hunters chased a boar toward the fringe of the scarlet wool. As I stared, I saw movement. Wind stirred the grass by the boar's feet. I blinked and the movement stopped. I stared again, and it started again. The dog had just bayed. I felt his throat relax. One of the hunters limped, and I felt a cramp in his calf. The boar grasped for breath and ran on fear and rage. What are you looking at? Olive asked. She had finished eating. I started. I felt as if I'd been in the rug. Nothing, just the carpet. I glanced at the rug again. An ordinary carpet with an ordinary design. Your eyes were popping out. They looked like an ogre's eyes, Hattie said. Buggy. But there, you look more normal now. She never looked normal. She looked like a rabbit. A fat one. The kind Mandy liked to slaughter for stew. And Olive's face was as blank as a peeled potato. I don't suppose your eyes ever pop out, I said. I don't think so, Hattie smiled complacently. They're too small to pop. The smile remained, but now it seemed pasted on. I forgive you, child. We and the peerage are forgiving. Your poor mother used to be known for her ill-breeding, too. Mother used to be known. The past tense froze my tongue. Girls, Dame Olga bore down on us. We must be going. She hugged me, and my nose filled with the stink of spoiled milk. They left. Father was outside at the iron gate, saying goodbye to the rest of the guests. I went to Mandy in the kitchen. She was piling up dirty dishes. Seems like these people didn't eat for a week. I put on an apron and pumped water into the sink. They never tasted your food before. Mandy's cooking was better than anybody else's. Mother and I used to try her recipes sometimes. We'd follow the instructions exactly and the dish would be delicious, but never as wonderful as when Mandy cooked it. Somehow, it reminded me of the rug. The carpet in the hall with the hunters and the boar. You know the one? Something funny happened to me when I looked at it before. Oh, that silly thing. You shouldn't pay attention to that old rug. She turned to stir a pot of soup. What do you mean? It's just a fairy joke. A fairy rug? How do you know? It belonged to Lady. Mandy always called Mother Lady. That wasn't an answer. Did my fairy godmother give it to her? A long time ago. Did Mother ever tell you who my fairy godmother is? No, she didn't. Where's your father? He's outside, saying goodbye. Do you know anyway, even though she never told you? Know what? Who my fairy godmother is. If she'd wanted you to know, your mother would have told you. She was going to. She promised. Please tell, Mandy. I am. You are not telling. Who is it? Me. Your fairy godmother is me. Here, taste the carrot soup. It's for dinner. How is it? My mouth opened automatically. The spoon descended and a hot, but not burning, swallow poured in. Mandy had gotten the carrots at their sweetest, carrotiest best. Weaving in and out of the carrots were other flavors, lemon, turtle broth, and a spice I couldn't name. The best carrot soup in the world, magical soup that nobody but Mandy could make. The rug, the soup, this was fairy soup. Mandy was a fairy. But if Mandy was a fairy, why was Mother dead? You're not a fairy. Why not? If you were, you would have saved her. Oh, sweetie, I would have if I could. If she'd left the hair in my curing soup, she'd be well today. You knew. Why did you let her? I didn't know till she was too sick. We can't stop dying. I collapsed on the stool next to the stove, sobbing so hard I couldn't catch my breath. Then Mandy's arms were around me, and I was crying into the ruffles along the neck of her apron, where I'd cried so many times before for smaller reasons. A drop landed on my finger. Mandy was crying too. Her face was red and blotchy. I was her fairy godmother too, Mandy said, and your grandmother's. She blew her nose. I pushed out of Mandy's arms for a new look at her. She couldn't be a fairy. Fairies were thin and young and beautiful. Mandy was as tall as a fairy was supposed to be, but whoever heard of a fairy with frizzy gray hair or two chins? Show me, I demanded. Show you what? That you're a fairy. Disappear or something. I don't have to show you anything. And, with the exception of Lucinda, fairies never disappear when other creatures are present. Can you? We can, but we don't. Lucinda is the only one who's rude enough and stupid enough. Why is it stupid? Because it lets people know you're a fairy. She started to wash the dishes. Help me. Do Nathan and Bertha know? I carried plates to the sink. Know what? You're a fairy. Oh, that again. No one knows but you. And you'd better keep it a secret. Mandy looked her fiercest. Why? She just scowled. I will, I promise. But why? I'll tell you. People only like the idea of fairies. When they bump up against a particular real-as-corn fairy, there's always trouble. She rinsed a platter. You dry. Why? Because the dishes are wet, that's why. She saw my surprised face. Oh, why is there trouble? 2 reasons, mostly. People know we can do magic, so they want us to solve their problems for them. When we don't, they get mad. The other reason is we're immortal. That gets them mad, too. Lady wouldn't speak to me for a week when her father died. Why doesn't Lucinda care if people know she's a fairy? She likes them to know, the fool. She wants them to thank her when she gives them one of her awful gifts. Are they always awful? Always. They are always awful. But some people are delighted to have a present from a fairy, even if it makes them miserable. Why did Mother know you're a fairy? Why do I know? All the Eleanor line are friends of the fairies. You have fairy blood in you. Fairy blood? Can I do magic? Shall I live forever? Would Mother have if she hadn't gotten sick? Are there many friends of the fairies? Very few. You're the only one left in Kyria. And no, love, you can't do magic or live forever. It's just a drop of fairy blood. But there's one way it has already started to show. Your feet haven't grown for a few years, I'll warrant. None of me has grown for a few years. The rest of you will soon enough, but you'll have fairy feet like your mother did. Mandy lifted the hems of her skirt and 5 petticoats to reveal feet that were no longer than mine. We're too tall for our feet. It's the only thing we can't change by magic. Our men stuff their shoes so no one can tell, but we ladies hide them under our skirts. I stuck a foot out of my gown. Tiny feet were fashionable. But would they make me even clumsier as I grew taller? Would I be able to keep my balance? Could you make my feet grow if you wanted to? Or, I searched for another miracle. Rain pelted the window. Or could you stop the rain? Mandy nodded. Do it. Please do it. Why would I want to? For me, I want to see magic. Big magic. We don't do big magic. Lucinda's the only one. It's too dangerous. What's dangerous about ending a storm? Maybe nothing. Maybe something. Use your imagination. Clear skies would be good. People could go outside. Use your imagination, Mandy repeated. I thought. The grass needs rain. The crops need rain. More, Mandy said. Maybe a bandit was going to rob someone, and he isn't doing it right now because of the weather. That's right. Or maybe I'd start a drought, and maybe I'd have to fix that because I started it. And then maybe the rain I sent would knock down a branch and smash into the roof of a house. And I'd have to fix that too. That wouldn't be your fault. The owners should have built a stronger roof. Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe I'd cause a flood and people would be killed. That's the problem with big magic. I only do little magic. Good cooking, my curing soup, my tonic. When Lucinda cast a spell on me, was that big magic? Of course it was. That numbskull. Mandy scoured a pot so hard that it clattered and banged against the copper sink. Tell me how to break the spell. Please, Mandy. I don't know how. I only know it can be done. If I told Lucinda how terrible it is, would she lift the spell, do you think? I doubt it, but maybe. Then again, she might take away one spell and give you another even worse. The trouble with Lucinda is ideas pop into her head and come out as spells. But what does she look like? Not like the rest of us, but you'd better hope you never lay eyes on her. Where does she live? I asked. If I could find her, maybe I could persuade her to lift my curse. After all, Mandy could be wrong. We're not on speaking terms. I don't keep track of the whereabouts of Lucinda the idiot. Watch that bowl. The order came too late. I got a broom. Are all friends clumsy? No, sweet. Fairy blood does not make you clumsy. That's human. You don't see me dropping plates, do you? I started to sweep, but it wasn't necessary. The pieces of pottery gathered themselves together and flew into the trash bin. I couldn't believe it. That's about all I do, honey. Small magic that can't hurt anybody. Handy sometimes, though. No sharp bits left on the floor. I stared into the bin. The shards lay there. Why didn't you turn it back into a bowl? The magic's too big. Doesn't seem like it, but it is. Could hurt someone. You never know. You mean fairies can't see the future? If you could, you'd know, wouldn't you? We can't see the future any more than you can. Only gnomes can. A few of them, anyway. A bell tinkled somewhere in the house. Father calling one of the servants. Mother never used the bell. Were you my great-grandmother's fairy godmother too? 1,000 questions flooded in. How long have you been our fairy godmother? How old was Mandy really? Bertha came in. Sir Peter wants you to be in the study, miss. What does he want? I asked. He didn't say. She twisted one of her braids anxiously. Bertha was scared of everything. What was there to be afraid of? My father wanted to talk to me. It was only to be expected. I finished drying a plate, dried another, then a third. Best not tarry, little mistress, Bertha said. I reached for a fourth dish. You'd better go, Mandy said, and he won't want to see that apron. Mandy was frightened too. I took off the apron and left. I stopped just within the doorway of the study. Father sat in Mother's chair, examining something in his lap. Ah, there you are, he looked up. Come closer, Ella. I glared at him, resenting the order. Then I took one step forward. It was a game I played with Mandy, obedience and defiance. I asked you to come closer, Eleanor. I came closer. Not near enough. I won't bite you. I only want to get to know you a bit. He walked to me and led me to a chair facing him. Have you ever seen anything as splendid as this? He passed me the object he'd had in his lap. You can hold it. It's heavy for its size. Here. I decided to drop it, since he liked it so much. But I glanced at it first, and then I couldn't. I held a porcelain castle no bigger than my 2 fists, with 6 wee towers, each ending in a miniature candle holder. And, strung between a window in each of 2 towers was a gossamer thread of china from which hung laundry. A man's hose, a robe, a baby's pinafore, all thin as a spider's web. And, painted in a window downstairs, a smiling maiden waved a silken scarf. It seemed to be silk, anyway. Father took it from me. Close your eyes. I heard him pull the heavy drapes shut. I watched through slitted eyes. I didn't trust him. He placed the castle on the mantel, put in candles, and lit them. Open your eyes. I ran to look closer. The castle was a sparkling wonderland. The flames drew pearly tints out of the white walls, and the windows glowed yellow gold, suggesting cheerful fires within. Oh, I said. Father opened the drapes and blew out the candles. Lovely, isn't it? I nodded. Where did you get it? From the elves. An elf made it. They're marvelous potters. One of Aguilin's students made this. I've always wanted an Aguilin, but I haven't got any yet. Where will you put it? Where do you want me to put it, Ella? In a window. Not in your room. In any room, but in a window, so it could wink out at everyone inside and on the street. Father stared at me for a long moment. I shall tell its buyer to place it in a window. You're going to sell it? I'm a merchant, Ella. I sell things. For a minute, he spoke to himself. And perhaps I can pass this one off as a genuine Aguilin. Who could tell? He came back to me. Now you know who I am, Sir Peter, the merchant. But who are you? A daughter who used to have a mother. He waved that aside. But who is Ella? A lass who doesn't wish to be interrogated. He was pleased. You have courage to speak to me so. He looked me over. That's my chin. He touched it, and I drew back. Strong, determined, that's my nose. I hope you don't mind that the nostrils flare. My eyes, except yours, are green. Most of your face belongs to me. I wonder how it will be on a woman when you grow up. Why did he think it was fine to talk about me as though I were a portrait instead of a maiden? What shall I do with you? He asked himself. Why must you do something with me? I can't leave you to grow up as a cook's helper. You must be educated. He changed the subject. What did you think of Dame Olga's daughters? They were not comforting, I said. Father laughed, really laughed, head back, shoulders heaving. What was so funny? I disliked being laughed at. It made me want to say something nice about the loathsome Hattie and Olive. They meant well, I suppose. Father wiped tears from his eyes. They didn't mean well. The older one is an unpleasant conover like her mother, and the younger one is a simpleton. It's never entered their heads to mean well. His voice became thoughtful. Dame Olga is titled and rich. What did that have to do with anything? Perhaps I should send you to finishing school with her daughters. You might learn how to walk like a slip of a thing that you are, and not like a small elephant. Finishing school? I'd have to leave Mandy. And they'd tell me what to do all the time, and I'd have to do it, whatever it was. They'd try to rid me of my clumsiness, but they wouldn't be able to. So they'd punish me, and I'd punish them back, and they'd punish me more. Why can't I just stay here? I suppose you could be taught by a governess. If I could find someone. I would much rather have a governess, Father. I would study very hard if I had a governess. But not otherwise. His eyebrows rose, but I could tell he was amused. He stood and went to the desk where Mother used to work out our household accounts. You may go now. I have work to do. I left. On my way out, I said, perhaps small elephants cannot be admitted to finishing school. Perhaps small elephants cannot be finished. Perhaps they... I stopped. He was laughing again.